morning, everybody. Innovation could lead to more health in the world, I think, and we will hear about that today. But the world is under steam, you might think. Are there still some people who are smoking? But we see that big tobacco makes about 80 to 90% of their sales with cigarettes and with fine cut. So people still smoke, and they smoke a lot. However, the industry of so-called risk-reduced products, by which we mean e-cigarettes, tobacco heaters, and nicotine pouches, is extremely dynamic, as we can see here, of course. New products are constantly coming onto the market. I recently spoke to an employee from BAT's Research and Development Department who was certain that more products will come onto the market in the coming years to satisfy people's nicotine needs. Really new products, which we don't know yet. My name is Mark Reisner. I'm editor-in-chief of DTZ, which means Die Tabakzeitung. It's a paper for the tobacco industry, and for editor-in-chief for Tobacco Journal International, which declares itself, I think. Today we want to shed light on this dynamic market with a panel of highly renowned experts. I would like to introduce to you and ask them to take the stage. No, they are already here, as you can see. Sarah Salim Sartoni. Sarah is a health psychologist and, as a doctor, has specialized in smoking cessation. Since discovering the e-cigarette as a means of harm reduction in 2015, I read that, right?
It's true, it's true.
She has made this technology the focus of her consulting work. The managing director of Salim Sartoni Associates is a recognized and renowned scientist who never loses sight of the practical implementation of measures. Next to me, on my right-hand side, Aaron Byrne-Carter advises companies on the latest developments in e-cigarettes, tobacco heaters, and oral nicotine pouches through his company NGP Trends. For Aaron, the focus is on consumer benefit. In example, the question of how innovations can offer consumers added value. Incidentally, Aaron is very much in demand. When I tried to reach him, he was always traveling somewhere in the world. But now, finally, he's here.
Making me feel bad.
We welcome Shem Baldu Singh.
Thank you.
Did I pronounce it right?
Yes, indeed.
Thank you. Shem is what you might call, in the best sense, a string puller. He has an excellent international network and brings a wide variety of organizations into contact with each other. He has also developed and implemented successful strategies for public affairs and stakeholder engagement in highly regulated environments and complex bureaucracies. And he knows the tobacco industry, having worked for Philip Morris, among others.
Yes.
Igor Yagubkin, last but not least, is here to represent the operational and entrepreneurial side. As manager for Europe of the company Alphabet Labs, you probably know the Flonk brand. The booth is over there. He's very familiar with the sales and marketing of nicotine products and knows the relevant markets, including tobacco, I think, by the way, very well. Welcome, Igor. Just a short note, our announcement also stated that Dr. Derek Yach would be attending, but unfortunately, Derek is ill and therefore cannot be here. All the best to him. And now, before we get straight into the discussion, please allow me to point out that we have planned a short Q&A session at the end. So if there's anything you would like to know, I would ask you to be patient until then. And now, Sarah will open our round with a short kick-off presentation.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm just going to kick off by reminding ourselves who we are creating this innovation for and what the innovation needs to look after people who smoke. So why do we need innovation? So we know that smoking is the biggest cause of preventable disease and death. We know it's more prevalent in vulnerable populations. So people who are homeless, people who are at the lower end of the socioeconomic status, people who have mental health issues, people who use substances. And we know that doesn't matter where you are on that spectrum, or even if you're an affluent smoker, 60 to 70% of smokers want to quit smoking. It doesn't matter where they come from in society. But we know that tobacco creates an overwhelming dependence. And you only need to see the chap behind me to understand how overwhelming it is. And we're creating these products for people who smoke, but they don't have the same relationship with tobacco. They all vary in the relationship they have with tobacco. They vary on how dependent they are. They vary on what novel product would appeal to them. And so when we're thinking about smokers, we have to think about looking after a spectrum of people, because one size doesn't fit all. And despite the amazing products that we have on the market at the moment, the biggest problem that we have in this category at the moment is misperception. And the misperceptions of nicotine, of tobacco harm reduction products, has only gotten worse in the last 10 years. So I just want to point out that 10 years ago, misperceptions were only, say, for example, 45% of the population knew that e-cigarettes were less harmful than smoking. Now, that's only down to 32%. So misperceptions have increased during the time. So they are rife, and so that's one of the major obstacles. So what's really the aim of innovation? So have a look at the diagram here. It looks a little bit complicated, but I'll talk you through it. So David Abrams posited that there were 3 factors that are needed to help smokers transition from smoking to a tobacco harm reduction product. So the first part, and the most important part, is to lower the harm. So these have to be less harmful than cigarettes. And at the moment, we're doing a pretty good job, but that should not stop us from getting even better at lowering the harm. The next area is dependence. We need to be able to look after smokers' cravings. And so if we're not looking after people's cravings, then really we're only leaving them to want another cigarette. So that's really important. Satisfaction has to be key. And the last one is appeal. And I remember, I'm a stop smoking specialist, and I remember the only products that I could deal with back then were nicotine replacement patches, gum, etc. And people didn't like using them. And if they didn't use them, they weren't getting enough nicotine. And if they weren't getting enough nicotine, they were in withdrawal, and then they would be smoking. So when e-cigarettes came along, and as Mark said, I was really excited in 2014, 15, seeing people using them, and not only using them to help them stop smoking, but enjoying using them. So this is it's a really important point. So we've got a variety, and a lot of people actually, I've put NRT up there, a lot of people discount it, but I'm now back in the hospital looking after patients at the moment, and looking after their dependents. But NRT does have its place. But we've got a variety of products, as we know. We've got vape, we've got heated tobacco, we've got pouches, and we've got heated vape products. But as I said, we've got many obstacles at the moment, and I think when we're talking about innovation, this is what the innovation team or the product team really need to be looking at. It needs to have efficient delivery, because at the moment, if we haven't got efficient delivery, it's a massive obstacle. Complicated setup and maintenance is really key here. And if it's too complicated, people won't engage with it. And back in 2013, 14, 15, we had tank devices. And people they couldn't be bothered. The tank would crack on them. Everything is leaking. And so it would just put them off, and they'd just go, I'm fed up with this. I'm going back to smoking. And in 2021, you enter with the disposable market, and suddenly people are starting to engage with these products really, really well. And the reason why is because with a cigarette, you need a lighter to make it work. With a disposable, you just take it out of a packet, put it to your mouth, and it's working. So we saw more engagement with tobacco harm reduction, and we also saw quit rates increase. But like I said, misperceptions are the real problem at the moment, and we need to correct that, and we'll talk about that later on. But again, you've got products out there, but we don't have any behavioral support. We don't have any support for the smoker. So that also, I think, when we're talking about innovation, that is something we should be talking about. At the moment, we just have product, but how do we use this product effectively? How do we use it in order to, reduce cravings effectively? And that is what is not looked at the moment, that bit of education and maybe looking at apps that can help people. So when we're looking at smoke-free exits, this is the last slide, everybody. More exits mean more people are getting out of smoking. It means more people do not have to go through smoking disease and related death. And there's a lot of people, we were talking before we came on the panel, and Shem made a really good point about it's not just smokers, it's their smokers' loved ones, because people are losing people. And so the better innovation, the better that we can help smokers, then the less grief everyone has to suffer. Obviously, they need to be less harmful, they need to be satisfying, they need to be appealing, and behavioral support within innovation, I think, is the next step. A lot of people think about technology and just nicotine delivery and what have you, but we're missing an aspect. And traditionally, within smoking cessation, we have a product, but we know that behavioral support and smoking cessation support is going to double the effectiveness of people getting on with that product. And if you're able to help people get on with the product, they'll buy it again, and they'll engage better. So I'll leave it for there, and I'll hand back over to Mark.
Thank you very much. I wondered whether one of you did ever smoke? Did you smoke?
I tried my level best in my teenage years, but didn't work for me.
Yeah, I used to smoke, but now I'm just using vaping. But I used to smoke quite for a long time.
Okay. So you're using e-cigarette
Yes.
for your nicotine consummation?
Yeah. And I mean, we're not here to talk about benefits of nicotine, but I use nicotine because it gives me focus, it kind of gives me stress relief, So yeah, I mean, for me, vaping is the best way to get that nicotine.
Okay. Let's talk about innovation, of course, and we heard that innovation can play a big part in reducing the harm caused by smoking. Where can such innovations come from? From which areas can it come from? And this first question goes to all of you, but please, Shem, would you like to start?
I'll take that, and I'll perhaps sound like Tesla here and say it's all about electricity. I think by replacing the heat source by which inhalable nicotine is released, we get rid of the combustion. And as we know, combustion is the issue. Mm-hmm. So I think that is the greatest innovation in terms of the leap forward in harm reduction that it poses. And I think also allied to the replacement of the heat source is what we've seen from a technological standpoint is the miniaturization of batteries. So the lithium-ion battery, not only in this sector, but across everything that we use these days, I think that is also a great leap forward.
Igor, you would add something?
No, maybe.
Yeah, for me, I think often when people look at innovation, they think of a technology solution. But for me, it's well, first looking at the consumer value and how can technology unlock that. And I think also encompassing and embedding a lot of engagement with consumers, current consumers or adult smokers or those non-consumers, those that haven't tried and will not try, and feeding that into the innovation cycle is I think is key, but not only into the product development, because I want to understand also a bit more of the behavior, the human behavior behind it, and the psychology of addiction, and feed those insights not only into innovation of products, but as Cyrus said, also the innovation of support systems and education. So yeah.
I said all I needed to say.
I think, Mark, I'll add to what's being said there. I think another aspect of innovation, as you know, we've moved away from not only the technological, but I think if we were to look at what's happening here today, what's happening in vape shops, the sharing of information, so in the analog world, offline, we're seeing, as Cyril would have commented, where we move away from the medicalization and treating smokers as patients to where we have now vape shops where someone could go in and they can be educated about the range of products that are available to them. And touching on what you said also, I think, there's that support, Syra, that's also offered on social media. So, there are a great many videos. There's there's a subculture of vapors, supporting vapors and sharing information. So I think that could also be seen as another form of innovation.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
If we focus on a very early stage of developments, we are going to know that every development has to be financed. And companies, big tobacco, they will only invest in products where they will have, or they think they will have, a return on invest. Aaron, in which area of risk-reduced products, RRPs, do you currently see the greatest potential?
Okay. Before I get out my crystal ball and before I put my money on this, what I would also say is I would like to curb that risk, because we're referring to big tobacco that have very deep pockets and can take that risk. But we're also a lot about risk mitigation as well, and applying techniques very early on to understand, before we even invest into development, are we making the right product? Yeah. And we don't even have to have a product. We can even just have a concept, and we can test that. We can build a web page and test some of the marketing claims and test it with consumers and understand, is that the direction we're going? Now I'll take out my crystal ball. I think there's a huge opportunity for nicotine pouches. I think we discussed this last year, and we're seeing it grow more. I think it offers a huge opportunity in low-income demographics as well. The use case, as Syra mentioned before, it's very simple. It's buy, use, dispose. Markets that we're seeing now that didn't historically have that use of snus, like Japan, for example, who have recently been really strict on smoking and have closed down a number of smoking areas. It's quite strict on vaping as well. You're now seeing consumers move to pouches because you've got more of that freedom of use and discreetness. So I think pouches opens up a huge opportunity, not only just for nicotine, but other active ingredients. And we're seeing also vapors now move into pouches, and you can see that in the flavor trends. A lot more of the pouches now are using more of the fruit and vape-like flavors, where historically they were quite high mint and savory. But I also think the education of pouches now is inspiring this education of other oral nicotine products. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more nicotine strips this year, further enhancing some of those benefits that we see in pouches. Or, go down there and visit Vont and look at the nicotine gum. Nicotine gum, old hat 5 years ago, 3 years ago, wouldn't have even looked at nicotine gum. However, I think now with this education around oral nicotine, there's definitely a place for it. So that's where I'm putting my £10 bet on.
But I think there's a hard way to go because, for example, in Germany, nicotine pouches are banned right now. Some analysts think that they will never come back. I don't know. And the prospect of health, it should, of course, but we'll see.
Yeah. But cigarettes are still on sale.
Yeah,
pouches
it is.
are banned.
There's a lot of low-income markets
Yeah.
now. If you look at the Philippines, and I think PMI, I spoke to somebody earlier who told me that they're actually now in the pharmacies or in the stores giving out free pouches just as a way to educate, because there's no investment in a device. There's no investment in a product. You buy one packet, 3, 4, whatever, £5. You have your 20 pouches. It's the cost investment that can be a barrier. If you're looking at heated tobacco, paying 10, 30, 40 euros, or even a device at some case. Yeah, we're not going to get into the whole political side of banning yet, but I still think there's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, but it's astonishing how great difference there are in how countries deal with this.
Yeah. You would almost want to bring the most amazing case studies and learn from each other.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things that are happening that are amazing in the world, but a lot of countries don't know about it. Mm-hmm. And so instead of reinventing a wheel, you can really just not copy-paste, but you can adapt it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also, Syra, you talk about bringing forth these amazing case studies, but, we've all heard and we have experienced the the magnificent achievement of Sweden and it, approaching near smoke-free status.
Right.
But somehow regulators and the media have a blind spot. They can't see this progress. Everyone is being asked for, where's the data? Where's the long-term data? Here we have 30 years of epi data, but yet again, no one will acknowledge it and no one will speak about it. So, it comes back again. I think there's we touched on it, Saira, there's a deliberate agenda by certain vested interests to steer away, I think, our focus from these positive stories.
But I think education, education, not call it campaigns, but what you were talking about, Aaron, they're tiny little things. And I think, when I was in the Stop Smoking service, nobody really knew about vape. Smokers, we needed to get them to know about vape. And what we did something called speed dating. Not for coupling up.
Either scenario.
But we had vapors come in and we had smokers come in and we actually sat a smoker with a vapor for 5 minutes just to get a little bit of how they did it and how they're getting on with it. And then they moved on to the next person. And for a lot of smokers, it's about gaining that reassurance. And it's about, well, what can we be doing in order to give people that access and that education and that ability to try before you buy. And that's the point. You saw that picture of that man. And when I was working in the hospital last week, I saw that same man. That isn't the same man, but I saw another man who came out with his drip. He is smoking a cigarette. He's on oxygen. He's on medicine. I've seen people with amputations out there. They are still smoking. So what can this industry do to help that man get off a cigarette? He's still smoking despite everything that's going on. So it's going to take a lot to get him to stop. So we need ways for people to engage with these products that, that doesn't mean that they have to invest a lot of money. They can try before they buy in a certain way, but they have to have the area to do that. How we do that, that's still to be decided, but those are the kind of ideas that, I'd like to see. Because you can have so much innovation, but if people can't try it...
Or if they don't know about it, so if
they don't know about it,
communicate about these innovative products,
exactly.
then we go nowhere.
Let's come back to one way of helping them, tobacco heaters. You are focused for the moment on tobacco heating products. That's a typical innovation for the tobacco industry because they use their software, so to say. And is this a good way for enterprises to develop their product range?
Look, I think this ultimately will be driven by consumers. I think it will be a question not only for big tobacco, for any entrepreneurial type to follow the money. And this is exactly what we've been seeing. So we have the traditional players who are now moving into the growth industries of nic pouches, as we've seen. So they can spot the trends and they will literally follow the money. Now, in terms of shifting, if I understand your question, it's just disrupting themselves. I think that certainly has occurred. I can only speak from limited experience within PMI, in that here we had Marlboro and all the connotations associated with Marlboro, and we had a large company disrupting itself from within and moving to not only in the first instance heated tobacco, but now moving in with its acquisition of snus in the US, moving into the other smokeless tobacco products. So again, there's harm reduction, which we all herald, but ultimately, as consumers are given a choice, as they are better informed about these products, I think we will see a shift by both entrepreneurs and established companies towards pursuing this agenda of smokeless products.
Yeah, Philip Morris speaks about the biggest disruption since the invention of digital photos.
Exactly. And I think in Philip Morris, they had that moment where the Kodak moment, literally, which is not, if you did not disrupt yourself, you yourself will become irrelevant in the years to come. And so they did do that, and I think kudos to PMI for doing that. although I'm no longer with PMI, I might sound like a spokesperson, but I guess it's ingrained in me still to highlight the positives.
But this opens also chances for smaller companies.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of companies who offer kind of sticks or something.
You're quite right. I mean, if we look at where heated tobacco and herbal sticks are prevalent, of course, beyond Japan and South Korea and Malaysia, there's several countries in Europe where there's a predominance of those heated heat sticks. And what we are seeing is a move away or a compatibility, a great many products that are compatible with the ICOS, with the EVOs and what have you. So there's a cross-compatibility going on. I was actually, as I looked at that some time ago, there is a vast array of smaller companies that are offering these devices in Malaysia and in Philippines, for instance, and certainly South Korea. So yes.
So it's a good way.
Yes, I think it breeds innovation. I think you had some companies that opened the door and others followed. Certainly that was the strategy we've seen. PMI opened the heated tobacco door, followed by BAT and Imperial and others. And from that, we had others who then not perfected, but at least fine-tuned that offering for the consumers.
We've already been given some useful examples of innovations in the nicotine industry. However, you are quite skeptical, I think, in some aspects. Why?
Yeah, like I do, but at the same time, I'm very delighted to see any innovations in vaping or in any ways of nicotine delivery that brings the product, the category closer to consumers as a proven way of harm reduction or nicotine or smoking cessation. Yeah. And to be honest, our company was born in 2018 exactly to offer to smokers, based on electronic cigarettes, to offer them an alternative way of nicotine consumption, and including actually, and we still believe, yes, so we believe and we work on the products based on behavioral therapy, yes, so to give the smokers the opportunity to control nicotine consumption and up to completely quit nicotine consumption, yes. So we will continue to offer these technological products, including those that based on integrated with mobile application. But look at the majority of current innovations in the industry. Just, like if we look around such, exhibitions or whatever in different happening in different cities. So tell me why adult smokers need big devices with big touch screens. So I'm talking about vaping industry, yes. So why they need the wristbands and these devices to carry them, yes. So why do they need this rainbow of flashlights when they puff, yes. So how does it correlate with actually their interest to? So they don't want to carry bulky devices. They don't want to spend more time looking for consumables. They don't want to pay more for these fancy devices, yes. So, and I think that the current innovations, they are going into like two directions. The first one is somehow to bypass the current legislative restrictions. And the second one is like to beautify these devices, which brings zero value to consumers. And they absolutely, what Sarah mentioned in the beginning, these obstacles, these barriers for smokers, how does it address it? How does it help them to adapt to new products? How does it help them to increase affordability, to get a better nicotine satisfaction? So basically, it's obvious. Yes, if we look at marketing, that the communication, yes, because it's important, yes, to talk about innovation, but together with such type of innovations with zero value, we see marketing campaigns that actually also a separate topic, yes. So, but the way how some companies, some players promoting these innovations, yes. So these flashlights and touch screens, yes. So it basically obvious move the industry to obvious consequences, yes. And consequences as the following: consumers, they don't see any values. Moreover, they're losing trust, yes. So because if they see such products, They none of the expectations, as you mentioned, yes. So they are not addressed at all, yes. So industry basically showing inability to integrate and run a responsible business, and regulators having difficulties to understand the market, to understand pluses and minuses, benefits, conduct the research, and finally they regulate this in the interest of society. They simply introduce new bans, which just will lead to growth of a legal market and even bigger harm to people's health. Yes, so this is where I have this skepticism solely in the direction and consequences of current innovations. Yes, in the mass market.
So the basic need from the consumer's point of view is that it has to be easy to use.
Of course. So I think this is the key slide, yes, so that initially sparked the industry that you showed. Yes, so we need to listen to feedback to smokers. Yes, so so it will help us, yes, to develop and to direct the innovations. Yes.
But you know, Sarah, we were saying earlier, it's not only ease of use, but you were talking about removing barriers. Let's make it happen. I don't know if you want to add to that on that point.
Well, like, say, for example, when people were using tank systems, they found it really difficult because they would crack, they would leak, and it would be really difficult. And they would go, forget it, and I think I've already mentioned that. But ease of use, so a lot of technology, there's technology, innovation. And sometimes I think we're just talking to ourselves. We're not really...
Yeah, it's functions without value.
It's function without value. And if it's not broke, why fix it? And, you know, when disposables came out, I was like, what is this nonsense? But then I realized, my God, it's such a simple solution. Of course, people are engaging with it. So I think technology needs to become more efficient in maybe the nicotine delivery, become better at educating smokers on how to use and craving control and education and support, but simple functionality.
Yep.
Because a smoker is so dependent that it just takes one thing to go wrong and they'll go back. So it's basically making sure that we as an industry do not give them that one thing that goes wrong and they go back. Everything has to be plain sailing for them.
Yeah.
Everything has to be easy for them. And they need to be held in doing it.
Yeah. And I think like pod systems anyway are very simple and convenient to use and provide more value for money than a disposable anyway. But the issue is the education. And now if you look at how pod systems are being packaged and how they're being promoted, they're promoting them as a ready-to-go option. So it just ties back to the education. And yesterday we showed some consumer research on Igor's point, where we asked current vapers to rate what was important to them, and we gave them a list of things. Flavor being top, flavor delivery, number of puffs. Right at the bottom, 0% was technology. They didn't care about the technology. And it's not a case maybe they don't. It could be a case they don't care or they don't understand, but what they don't understand is how the technology feeds into those benefits that they care about. Number of puffs, flavor, delivery. So it's all about tying it back to the education part.
And can I just add one vital thing? Cost. Why are they going to invest? I mean, I was working in the hospital the other day, and I recommended, because as part of my job, I can talk about tobacco harm reduction. And one of my patients, he said, vape doesn't do it for me. I've been smoking since I was 7. And I was smoking 60 a day, and I've recently gone down to 25 a day. So he needs something that is very similar to a tobacco, to give him that familiarity.
Yep.
How much is he going to have to fork out to get that set up? You're talking about a person who's living in a deprived area. That is not going to happen. So fine, that technology is there, that innovation is there, but it is not reaching the smoker. And I think we need to find a solution for that.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say about that.
Let's come to another point of view. What about subsidized for innovation, Aaron? Can companies hope for support of any kind from state institutions, or where should it come from?
Yeah, so I was speaking to my colleague Steve about this because he's more of an expert. So there are some R&D incentives available, but that's very country specific and it's not specific to this space. And yeah, I think there should be, especially for those smaller players that have that agility and they don't have those obstacles that they would have in big tobacco, but what they don't have is the funding and budget for it. So is it currently there dedicated to this space? I don't think it is, but there needs to be. More so for those smaller players. They're the ones that are driving, in our opinion, agile innovation, agile product development, because they're not going to have to go through those layers and obstacles that big tobacco have to. But they don't have the deep pockets for it. So how can we support them? Mm-hmm. There's not much really I can say on that.
Yeah, but it is a difficult market.
Yes, yeah.
Let's come to Shem. When we talk about promotion, we also have to talk about regulation, but that's a great and important topic. My impression is that any developments in this market are at least being slowed down due to this reason also. And one example I mentioned before are the nicotine pouches in Germany, which are banned right now. Even they are very helpful in quitting smoking, as we know from other countries. Let's take another look at your example of tobacco-free sticks for tobacco heaters, but also there's coming no good things from Brussels, I think.
Before I come to heat sticks, let me touch on that point from Germany. I think that, maybe in the medium to long term, I don't think the door has been firmly shut on that debate, because if I recall, the German government has been asked about nicotine pouches and their potential as a harm reduction tool. And the Ministry of Agriculture responded by saying, look, we're carefully considering what the Federal Institute of Risk Assessment has done. And I think crucially, that BFIR, that institute in Germany, has clearly stated that nicotine pouches do have a role to play in harm reduction. So I think that, we might revisit that proposition in Germany at some point, if there's enough advocacy from others. But in terms of regulation of heat sticks and herbal heat sticks, I think now that with the flavor ban for heat sticks from October last year, I think there's a definite move towards herbal heat sticks and the flavorings that they offer. In terms of regulation, there's always the chilling gaze of regulation, but personally, I don't think that we should fear regulation. I think it's a good thing in terms it gives everyone a level playing field. We have parameters in which we can operate. In terms of regulation of heat sticks, we of course know that states are now obligated to transpose that law into national regulations. But what I've also noticed is that some countries are also looking at herbal heat sticks and either now treating those as tobacco heat sticks in the case of Italy. And I think Italy has a very interesting law from 2014 whereby it treats any tobacco substitutes as a tobacco heat stick. So that's an interesting one. And very quickly, I know that places like Latvia and Croatia are turning their attentions to regulating herbal heat sticks as well. But I think what is a good indicator, and we touched on this before, is tax. The great majority of EU countries tax herbal heat sticks in some way. So I think tax, again, isn't to be feared. I think it's the quantum of tax that we should fret about. But taxation in of itself is not necessarily a deterrent.
Okay. So that's it for tobacco heaters. For e-cigarettes, what do you think will come in the next few months or few years, better to say? Because we have to throw an eye onto the TPD Dry 3, which will come into, 2026, I think. 2025, no, 2026 maybe. What do you attend?
Yes, so for TPD3, it's difficult to I don't want to speculate and predict anything, yes, but crystal ball, if Aaron can share.
I'll give you that.
Yeah. But what I would like actually to see in TPD3, that regulators will maybe do 3 simple things. Yes, so I think they need just to look at the new generation product and just study it precisely and long term. Yes, strategically. This is the first thing, and the second and third. So the second thing is they need to, for sure, find effective ways how to restrict sales to minors, because the problem exists. And again, just to avoid any like speculations, I think there are some very simple ways how to do it. Yes, so to restrict, in my opinion, online sales and to reinforce the offline retailers, so don't put everything on the shoulders of manufacturers or whatever. And things number 3 is to find effective ways how to switch smokers to a new generation product, because if we talk about success of vaping in the UK, pouches in Scandinavia, so again, let's look at all of these success stories. Yes, because otherwise these display bans, like flavor bans, whatever bans of specific categories, like we discussed, pouches in Germany and etc., it will not help. It will just cut off everyone, including smokers, from the possibility to make a conscious choice, informed choice. Yes, this is just the way to nowhere. Yes, because yeah, it's like so this flavor ban, for example. Yes, so if we talk about flavor ban, so what to do with smokers who, thanks to flavors, vaping, so they stop smoking, so they switch and remained in vaping, and then from vaping they probably switch to other nicotine categories. So should they get used to tobacco flavors again, or like what will be their journey? Yes, so that's my kind of questions and concerns about TPD3. Yes.
Sarah, what a flavor ban mean for people who would like to quit
Well,
smoking?
you're pushing them back to the flavor that they were getting away from. And what I fear is, like I was saying before, if you enjoy vaping a flavor and you now have to go back to tobacco, which some people might enjoy, but I think the vast majority wouldn't, then you're not going to use it enough. And then you're not going to look after your cravings enough. And then you're going to go, you know what, a cigarette really hit that spot. And what I'm afraid of is we'll push people back to smoking. The other thing that I was thinking about was, if you're getting them to smell tobacco aroma again, would you maybe stimulate that craving again for a cigarette, because you've got that familiarity now that pushes you back to that end of the risk continuum spectrum. So it would be awful. And then you'll have an illicit market, and people will be getting flavors from an illicit market, and God knows what's going to be in those liquids. So for me, it would, I'm very, very fearful. And what government should be doing is evidence-based policy, evidence-based regulation, and they should look at the evidence on this, because the evidence exists that flavors help transition more effectively.
And as we learned, people who want to cease smoking and who are going to vape, they very often won't have to do with big tobacco. They won't have any tobacco taste. So yeah, that underlines what you said. Igor, in our previous interview, you indicated that a complete ban on e-cigarettes could be the goal in many countries. What does that mean for the industry? What could that mean for the industry?
Yeah, well, I hope that the complete ban will will not happen, but the ban on disposable, so basically, I think in the last 6 months is becoming more and more real, yeah? And again, so 2 main concerns when we're discussing this. The one is access to minors, which again, like I mentioned already, yes, so there are a lot of other ways how to deal with this, and the ban will not stop them to order online, to go to illicit channels and to buy this, yes. And the second one is environmental harm, which is of course the problem, but it's not unique. The same problem exists in automotive industry, in consumer electronics, and moreover, there are a few examples that industry already started to think about how to manage and to control and to minimize environmental harm from disposable cigarettes. And here I think also it can be a good example when government, society, together with manufacturers, can focus and direct investments, yes, in investments into innovations and innovation itself. If we're talking about innovation technologies, yes, so as Aaron mentioned, yes, so the investors will invest into technologies, yes, so only if they see that these technologies are needed and they will pay off. So why not to find a solution how to reduce and minimize the environmental harm from disposables, because then also this agenda will not go away anyway. Yes, so it will be pod systems. Yes, so also batteries, also consumables. So like all these traditional cigarettes that produce a lot of pollution in terms of the filters and etc. etc. Yes, so I think there are many ways how to do it. Yes, and I think. Again, the problem is that with all these kind of things that manufacturers will suffer, especially responsible ones, but at the same time the industry will be able to adopt. Yes, but my main concern that everything is against of consumers. Yes, just it will make their life harder. Yes, so that's basically the best, the main problem. Yes, because we all work for consumers, yes, so is the industry and also regulators, they also should think about people, yes.
Aaron, something to add?
So I would say some of the more notable brands in the single-use segment have created brand identity and brand loyalty through accessibility, but at the risk of being too accessible. They're literally everywhere, and it's crazy that I could go back to the UK, go to a wholesaler, buy 100, I won't say the name, bars, and go and sell them, right? I mean, like, do the governments not want to make money? Why don't we license them? Why don't retailers have a dedicated license to be able to retail these? We do a lot of consumer research with the among vape stores, and those vape stores are no longer competing against other vape stores. They're competing against the electronics store, the phone store down the road, even the barber shop, because they're everywhere. So I think ban is the extreme, but at least maybe, you know, put a license to alcohol on where these products can be retailed.
Mm-hmm. That leads me to another aspect. There are a lot of discussions in Germany, for example, because cannabis is kind of legalized right now. Nobody talks about banning alcohol or something like that.
Which is a grade 1 carcinogen.
It is, of course, yeah. And but cannabis now becomes more and more part of daily life, maybe. Yeah, what do you think? How does it fit together that maybe RRPs are over-regulated? Are they? And on the other way, on the other side, cannabis is going to be legalized more and more in more and more countries. Who wants?
I mean,
Look, I think
yeah, go ahead.
taking that point, you know, in terms of RRPs, and I see John here, my friend, who has UKVIA, have been pressing for a licensing scheme. You know, you have that, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, you have a licensing regime which exists for stores selling alcohol, but there isn't such a requirement for those selling nicotine products. And so I think that's one aspect that may well be welcome, and I know certainly in the UK, and John's UKVIA is pressing for it. So I think that is one aspect we could perhaps, or one inspiration we can look at. As I say, I don't personally, as I said before, I think regulation is a good thing. We should welcome regulation. As Cyrus says, that is evidence-based. I think that's the crucial point.
And if that license is in place, those licensed retailers wouldn't take the risk of selling illicit vapes or selling to underage as well, right?
Exactly.
Shim, other ways to counteract this for nicotine products?
Counteracts. Look, I think counteract, let's take Sarah's example for a moment. If we were to bring all the positive examples out there, be it Sweden, be it New Zealand, let us look at some of these practices that occurs. I mean, staying on the licensing point, if we looked at the legislation as it exists in New Zealand, where they specifically allow for specialist stores to offer a wider range of products, but in the general consumer stores, there are certain restrictions. So I think, there are some inspirational stories and examples that we can look to. Of course, I think we all agree age restrictions and an appropriate use and advertising is necessary. You talked about nicotine pouches being given away for free so as to encourage them. I don't think that's perhaps the best way because, we sometimes could find ourselves in trouble with these product giveaways. I think, let's be a little more circumspect on that. But I'll stop there just to allow anyone else to come in on that.
It was PMI doing it.
Well, I'm no longer with PMI, so I don't have to.
I would like to come to a very difficult kind of innovation, Sarah. The UK has long been regarded as a quite exemplary when it comes to RRPs. I remember the Stoptober, for example, which was, I think, innovative. That is also a form of innovation. What can other countries learn from the UK? Should they learn?
If you asked me this question a year ago, I'd be going, everything to learn. You've got everything to learn. But let me talk about the positives first. We did have campaigns like Swaptober, or Stoptober, sorry, I'm getting mixed up with Swap to Stop here. So we did have campaigns like Stoptober that were really good because it gave people, like Dry January, we have Dry January for alcohol, we've got Vapril now for vaping, we've got Stoptober. So there are different parts of the year that, there's a drive to kind of motivate people to stop smoking. And I don't know if that's done really anywhere else. But the number one thing that Britain has done really is to be giving away 1 million vape kits to stop smoking services for them to use with communities that wouldn't ordinarily have access or be able to afford access to these products. And it is a very exciting time to be a clinician in a stop smoking service because we have the ability to gift, and people cannot believe it. And the number one reason they cannot believe it is not because this is for free. It's the fact that the NHS believe enough in the evidence of vaping to be able to say, this is effective, this is less harmful, here you go. And it really does bring down the misperception, not only of themselves, but for the people around them. So for a lot of vapers, they'll be vaping and they'll have their wives or their husbands or their friends or their relatives finger wagging, what are you doing? It's nicotine, you shouldn't be using nicotine. So actually, with the NHS giving these things out, you're able to lower that misperception and get more of a population acceptance on this category.
Sarah, on that, as you know, no one product will appeal to everyone. Would you not welcome the introduction of, say, nic pouches? I know I talked about product giveaways, but in a smoking cessation.
And like I said before on the presentation, every smoker is different. And everyone will go towards different variations of nicotine delivery. So everything has to be out on the table.
Yeah.
So we need all of those products. But I think because we have a strong evidence base from Public Health England, or which was Public Health England, and from Cochrane, and around the world, with reviews from Nancy Rigotti, all of that helps create that evidence base. And in England, we have something called the NICE guidance, which is the National Health Institute of Care and Excellence. So we have that, and that sets guidance for any kind of medicine, on how to use it, on clinical guidance for any disease. And e-cigarettes are now part of a clinical tool within the Stop Smoking Guidance. So within the Stop Smoking Guidance, tools are NRT, Zyban, cytosine, and e-cigarettes, and behavioral support. We are now within that list That is amazing, and that's what countries around the world should be taking on board. With regards to the disposable ban, I agree completely with my colleagues. We need to have a licensing scheme. We need to be enforcing the current regulations of not selling to minors, but taking away an accessible, easy-to-use product, for me, is going to harm smokers who could think about going into it because they'll think, my God, it's banned. Does that mean that these products are more harmful than smoking? Because smoking isn't being banned. The repercussions of this, the unintended consequences of this, it's absolutely, I despair. So I don't think people should learn from that, but from the swap to stop and getting e-cigarettes as clinical guidance. And Shem, you make a good point. There are other products, but I think until we get that evidence base on the effectiveness and the relative risk, I don't think they can go forward.
Okay, thank you. Just one more short question because we are running out of time. And I would like Aaron and Igor to share the crystal ball again.
Okay, crystal ball.
Aaron, in which areas do you expect innovations in the coming years?
How long do I have? I don't know. I think I do expect to see more development in beyond nicotine as well, other active ingredients that maybe share other perceived benefits, maybe in energy, focus, well-being, calmness. But I'm just going to touch on just some consumer research that we did a few months ago. And when we were talking to consumers and we were asking them what do they want to, we're speaking to current vapers, and we were asking what would they want to see change in their products, what new features, what would they like to see? And we can kind of assume that some people are saying we want it to last long, we want more puffs, we want more flavor optionality. But actually there was a few consumers that were coming back to us and saying, when I was smoking, I knew how much I was having. Now that I'm vaping, I can't track that, and I'm not able to kind of, there's consumers that want to be maybe less dependent on the nicotine, and because these are so accessible and easy to use, they kind of lose that ability to track that. So could we see some innovations? I know that you might jump in, Igor, in exploring how we can do this, but can we adapt other functionalities such as Bluetooth connectivity to be able to track nicotine use? Simple functions on devices that might give a vibration function when you may be having too much in a small session. That's just maybe one area, but we're overrunning time, and it's a topic I could talk about a long time.
It is.
Yeah, very quickly, not to repeat. Yes, I think, the innovation will be directed by two things. Yes, so the first one is legislation, and the second one is the feedback from smokers. Yes, so because interestingly now, actually, both smokers and legislation are actually moving to the same direction. Yes, they want products less harmful but closer to traditional cigarettes. Yes, so, and I think that will make heat not burn also will continue to grow because actually it's quite closer to traditional cigarettes, to tobacco, but the affordability and because the price is quite high and the convenience of usage is very complicated. Yes, like I think a lot of innovation will be to focus to give a better satisfaction, a better as the same as disposables. Everyone, especially when the disposable ban happen, everyone will try to invent the same product as disposables to give the same convenience for smokers. Yes, quick question, answer, not to delay our colleagues.
Okay, thank you very much to all of you. It was very interesting. It was.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
yeah, I offered a short question and answer session, but we don't have some more time. But hopefully you can ask
we'll be around.
the panelists in one-to-one talks.